Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. Darren sat across from me like he was already celebrating, that smug little smirk on his face like he'd just won the damn lottery. His lawyer, some baby-faced guy in an overpriced suit, stood up and kept talking like I wasn't even in the room. Mr. Jacobs gave up his career to support Ms. Jacobs' aggressive business ambitions. He was the emotional backbone of the marriage, the one who maintained their home while she focused solely on financial gain. We believe he's entitled to an equal division of all marital assets, including the farmhouse property in Gallia County. I clenched my hands under the table. The farmhouse? That property was in my name before I ever knew Darren existed. It was mine. My uncle left it to me. I restored it with my own damn hands. And this parasite thought he could walk off with half just because he played house for a few years? The courtroom was packed. Reporters, local business people, some I knew, most I didn't. But they were all here for the same reason, to see how the Jacobs divorce would shake out. Big name divorce, real estate money, drama. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, nodded toward me. Ms. Jacobs, you may respond. I took a deep breath and stood. My heels clicked against the floor, steady and sharp. I'd been waiting for this. But first, I reached down into my bag, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a sealed envelope. Cream-colored, thick, sealed with a red tab. I placed it gently on the desk in front of Carol, my attorney, and then looked Darren right in the eyes. His smirk twitched. Carol smiled just a little and slid the envelope toward the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to enter this into evidence. Darren shifted in his seat. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something with a suddenly very different tone. His voice was tight. I didn't catch the words, but I caught the energy. That confidence? Gone. The judge opened the envelope, peeled back the paperwork, and started reading. Her eyes moved slowly, line by line. It was all there. Signed, dated, notarized. And Darren's whole body stiffened when he saw it. Carol leaned toward me and whispered, "Now we start." I looked at Darren again, and this time I smirked. Then I turned back to the judge. Would you like me to speak now? She nodded. Yes, Ms. Jacobs. Please proceed. I stepped forward, calm as hell, and I let it begin. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and started to speak. Calm, controlled, and sharp as glass. But as I stood there, one part of my brain drifted. Back to Chicago. Back to where I first met the man now sitting there trying to gut my life for parts. It was the trade expo at McCormick Place, late March, gray skies, cold wind cutting through my coat like paper. I didn't even want to be there. My uncle had just passed, and I was still deep in the fog. He raised me after my mom OD'd when I was 9. That man taught me everything. Numbers, deals, respect, keeping a property standing through 60 Midwest winters. Losing him cracked something open in me. So yeah, I wasn't exactly grounded when Darren walked up to my booth. Historic preservation, he said, flipping one of my brochures like he actually cared. That's hot. You don't see many women killing it in that space. I should have brushed him off right there. But I was exhausted, raw, and he looked clean. Fresh shave, button down, bright white smile, soft voice like he'd been raised in a church and a country club. He asked about my properties, my renovation process, who I worked with, said he admired how I kept the character of old structures intact, called me brilliant with numbers and taste, told me I had a mind like a CEO and hands like a craftsman. I remember thinking, this guy is either a unicorn or a salesman. Spoiler, he was the second kind. Still, I let him take me to dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just deep dish and cheap Cabernet, and he made me laugh for the first time in weeks, kept saying I deserved to be taken care of for once. Next thing I knew, we were texting every night. Then he flew to Columbus to surprise me a week later. Then it was weekend trips, nice hotels, slick little gifts, a leather folio, a custom pen, a ridiculous bottle of wine from a vineyard I couldn't pronounce. He knew how to work a woman who was stretched thin. I did have doubts. I'm not an idiot. He was just a little too available, never talked much about his work, claimed he did freelance consulting for some real estate clients. That could mean anything. But the way he listened, or pretended to, that's what got me. I'd spent most of my adult life around men who only cared about my numbers, my contacts, or my property list. Darren acted like he saw me. And after about 7 months of dating, he pulled out a ring at a rooftop dinner in Nashville. Big cheesy gesture, full skyline behind him, violinist and all. I remember hesitating. I remember my stomach tightening. I wasn't sure. But then he said, "Amanda, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You do everything alone. Let me do this with you." That hit me where I was weakest. I said yes. When I told Carol, my attorney, who'd been with me since my first flip at 23, she went full stiff neck mode. "You're doing a prenup, period." I said, "Of course." I didn't even argue. I'd seen too many deals go south to be naive. When I brought it up to Darren, I expected pushback, maybe some guilt, but he just grinned and said, "Whatever makes you feel better, babe. I've got nothing to hide." He signed it the next morning. No questions, no review, no lawyer. Said it was just paperwork. I remember thinking he was being mature about it. Now I realize he never read a damn word. It was about a year and a half into the marriage when the estate finally closed. My uncle's attorney called me in, clean suit, quiet office. Same guy who'd handled his will since the 80s. He slid a folder across the table, tapped twice. "It's finalized. Everything transfers to you." Over $3 million in cash, a farmhouse built in 1846 down in Vinton County, and a garage full of antiques my uncle used to call the old ghosts. I walked out in a daze. Grief never leaves you. It just rearranges itself. That inheritance felt like my uncle's final instruction. Handle your business. Keep building. When I told Darren, he damn near did a cartwheel in our kitchen. "We're set," he shouted, spinning me around like we'd won Powerball. I pulled away. "It's my inheritance, Darren, from my uncle. Personal, not marital." He laughed it off. Yeah, of course. I'm just saying, it's amazing. For us." That was the first red flag. But I let it go. By the end of the week, he quit his part-time gig at a real estate firm. Said he wanted to build something of his own now that we had breathing room. Then came the truck, some obnoxious black F-150 with chrome rims and a custom wrap that said Jacobs Property Solutions. I asked, "What business?" He smiled like a kid who got into the cookie jar. "Branding, babe, visibility. Gotta look the part if I'm gonna pitch deals." I should have shut it down, but I paid the down payment. He said he'd cover the rest. Spoiler, he didn't. A few weeks later, he tells me his old college buddy is opening a craft brew pub and needs investors. Darren's eyes lit up like he'd just found gold in the backyard. "Think about it," he said, pacing the kitchen. "You bring the real estate edge, I bring the brand. Local, organic, historic building. It's right up your alley." I said, "You know running a bar is nothing like renovating a farmhouse, right?" He waved it off. "It's not just a bar. It's an experience." Against my better judgment, I let him use some of my money. Not a lot, but enough. And of course, the place flopped within 6 months. That's when I started seeing the pattern. At networking events, he'd introduce himself as co-founder of my company, which didn't even make sense. He'd talk about our properties, our portfolio, said the farmhouse was our legacy project. I corrected him once at a local fundraiser. He laughed and rubbed my back like I was joking. Colleagues started treating him like my partner. Even the preservation board chair once said, "You two are such a power couple. He really grounds you." Grounds me, more like drags. Still, I kept quiet, kept watching. He wasn't just spending. He was positioning, acting like the wealth was his too, like he earned it. But I hadn't forgotten that prenup. Not for a second. But I hadn't forgotten that prenup. Not for a second. 6 months before the court date, I started hearing whispers at events, the kind of offhand comments people make when they think they're flattering you. Someone at a preservation gala leaned in with a glass of wine and said, "It's amazing what you and Darren built together. You're like the Chip and Joanna of rural Ohio." I just smiled, tight, didn't correct it. But my stomach twisted. Then it happened again, twice in 1 week. A bank contact of mine called him a damn good businessman. Said he and Darren had chatted at a mixer, and Darren told him the farmhouse was our legacy property. Claimed we turned it around together. That's when I knew something was off. This wasn't just bragging, it was calculated. A couple nights later, I caught him in the kitchen on his laptop. He jumped when I came in, slammed it shut like a teenager caught watching porn. "Everything okay?" I asked, opening the fridge like I wasn't clocking every move. "Yeah, just checking emails," he said too fast. He got up, mumbled something about taking a shower, and left the laptop on the table. Now look, I don't go through people's stuff. I don't play spy. But that night, I made an exception. His inbox was still open, and right there, plain as day, was a thread with a divorce attorney. Subject line: Preliminary Alimony Strategy. Oh, guidelines. I read every word. He'd been asking about spousal support laws, community property loopholes, and how Ohio handles gray areas in premarital asset growth. He used phrases like, my role in her business, and our shared lifestyle, said he was concerned I might attempt to weaponize the prenup. Weaponize? Buddy, you signed it. I remember standing there, frozen, while the fridge motor hummed in the background. I wasn't even angry yet, just locked in, like a switch had flipped. The next morning, I called Carol. She didn't even sound surprised. I had a feeling, she said. When do you want to start? Now. We got to work. Quietly, carefully. I made copies of everything: bank records, the prenup, inheritance paperwork. I moved the farmhouse title into a separate trust, completely legal and within my rights. Carol reviewed every clause, every signature, and I filed first. That's the part that mattered. People always think filing first is just about pride. It's not. It's about control. I wanted him served before he could make a single move, before he could spin his little sob story to a judge. He never saw it coming. I was out of town when the papers hit. Deliberately, I scheduled a property walkthrough in Cincinnati, then had the process server show up at the house late afternoon on a Friday. Carol texted me 2 hours later. Confirmed, served, no reaction yet. He didn't call, didn't text, which told me exactly how much he'd been hiding. He knew what he was doing, and he knew I'd just pulled the rug out from under him. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to read, was how airtight that prenup really was. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to read, was how airtight that prenup really was. So I stood there in front of the judge, eyes steady, hands loose at my sides. The courtroom was quiet, just the soft rustling of paper and the clicking of someone's pen behind me. The envelope had already been passed across the desk. Carol didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Darren leaned forward in his seat, eyebrows drawn like he was trying to figure out what the hell was happening. His lawyer reached for the envelope with a smile that was clearly fake, tight, awkward, and just a little nervous. He opened it and started flipping through the pages. His lips moved as he read. Then he froze. Darren leaned in and whispered, "What is it?" The lawyer kept reading. I watched the blood drain from Darren's face as his lawyer finally looked at him and said, not so quietly, "Did you know about this?" Darren shook his head. "What the hell is that?" The judge cleared her throat, already scanning the top page. "Ms. Jacobs, this is the signed prenuptial agreement between you and Mr. Jacobs." "Yes, Your Honor. Signed, dated, and notarized a month before our wedding. It's been filed and authenticated." The judge nodded. "I see that." She flipped a few pages and started reading portions aloud. Slow, deliberate, every word slicing the air. Any assets held by Amanda Jacobs prior to the date of marriage, including but not limited to real estate, business holdings, and inheritance, shall remain her sole and separate property. She paused, looked up at Darren. "This shall include any future earnings derived from those assets, unless explicitly commingled with marital funds." Darren looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His lawyer stood, face red. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess to—" "Request denied," the judge said flatly. "You were given discovery time. If this wasn't reviewed, that's not this court's problem." Darren's head snapped toward me. "You had this the whole time?" I didn't flinch. "You signed it, Darren." His mouth opened, then shut. Then he started bouncing his leg. Fast, sweating through his shirt already. His jaw tightened like he was holding back a full-blown tantrum. The judge kept reading. "No claim shall be made by either party to assets protected under this agreement in the event of divorce." Carol leaned in, calm as a surgeon. "That's page 3. Wait until she hits page 5. And she did. "Any property inherited during the marriage by Amanda Jacobs, including real estate, funds, or family heirlooms, shall be considered separate property and not subject to equitable division." Darren slumped back in his seat like he'd been punched. His lawyer whispered something, probably trying to regroup, but it was over. He knew it. I knew it. Everyone in the room knew it. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, back straight, watching my husband fall apart piece by piece. The judge finished reading and set the documents down slowly. This is a legally binding agreement. Unless counsel can provide compelling evidence of fraud or coercion, I see no basis to exclude it. Darren's lawyer stood again, sweating almost as much as his client. We'd like to save it, the judge said. We'll continue with testimony after a 10-minute recess. Court is adjourned for now. The gavel hit the block. I stayed seated while the room buzzed. Reporters scribbling notes, spectators murmuring, a bailiff giving Darren a long side eye. He stood up fast, pacing like a caged dog, hands on his hips, muttering to himself. Red-faced, sweaty, rattled. That smug confidence he always carried around like a shield, gone. Carol stood, slow and cool. Well, she said, brushing invisible lint off her blazer. I guess he finally read the damn thing. I didn't say a word. I just watched him crack. 10 minutes later, court resumed. Darren was still pale, jaw clenched, pacing in tight circles near the defendant's table. His lawyer looked like he'd spent the entire recess chugging antacids. As soon as the judge sat down, he jumped to his feet. Your Honor, he said, voice strained but loud. Mr. Jacobs had no independent counsel at the time of signing. He was told the prenuptial agreement was a formality. The judge cut him off. By whom? By Ms. Jacobs, he said, turning to gesture at me. She presented it as a routine document. Mr. Jacobs was led to believe it was standard, nothing to worry about. He trusted his wife. The courtroom went still. The judge looked at Darren. Mr. Jacobs, did your wife tell you the agreement was just a formality? Darren hesitated, blinked a few times like he needed a script. She said it was just something her lawyer made her do. The judge nodded once. Did she prevent you from reading it? No, he said quickly. Did she discourage you from seeking your own attorney? Darren looked at his lawyer like he needed permission to answer. I mean, she didn't say not to. The judge narrowed her eyes. So you chose not to read it thoroughly or hire your own counsel. He shifted in his seat. I skimmed it. I trusted her. There it was. Carol stood slowly, all calm, grace, and fire underneath. Your Honor. Page 7 of the agreement includes a signed waiver acknowledging Mr. Jacobs declined independent counsel. His initials are on every page. His signature is witnessed and notarized. She walked to the table, lifted the packet the judge had already reviewed, and tapped the page with one red lacquered nail. The judge took the document, adjusted her glasses, and read it aloud. I, Darren Jacobs, understand the terms of this agreement, have had sufficient time to review it, and am signing freely and voluntarily, without coercion. She set the papers down with a small thud. Mr. Jacobs, do you dispute this signature? Darren looked like he was chewing glass. No. Carol stayed standing. Your Honor, opposing counsel's argument boils down to, my client didn't do his homework. That's not a legal defense. Darren's lawyer tried again. We believe. You can believe what you want, the judge snapped. This agreement is clear, signed, notarized, and voluntarily executed. Whether Mr. Jacobs read it or not is his responsibility. Darren's mouth opened like he was going to protest again, but nothing came out. He just sank lower in his chair, hands balled into fists. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He was unraveling all on his own. The judge looked at him one last time. You had time. You had access. You had options. You didn't use them. She turned to Carol. Anything further before we proceed to financial disclosures? Carol sat back down and said, almost bored, not at this time. And just like that, the prenup was locked in, bulletproof. And just like that, the prenup was locked in, bulletproof. The judge looked down at her docket. We'll now move to financial disclosures. Carol opened the folder in front of her and passed a thick packet to the clerk. Your Honor, this includes full documentation of marital expenses, account separation, and individual debts incurred during the marriage. The clerk handed it to the judge. She flipped through the first few pages slowly, nodding. Ms. Jacobs, she said, can you briefly summarize? I stood again, keeping my voice even. Every household and marital expense, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, was paid through my business income. The inheritance from my uncle was kept in a separate trust, untouched except for property maintenance on the farmhouse, which the prenup specifically protects. Carol added, all statements are included, business, personal, and trust accounts. The judge continued flipping through the file. And Mr. Jacobs's debts? She asked. Carol didn't hesitate. Page 9, Your Honor. The judge turned the page. Her eyes stopped. The $78,000, she asked, eyebrows raised. Carol nodded. Yes, that includes a luxury vehicle loan, a failed investment into a privately owned bar venture, and over $23,000 in credit card charges, all in Mr. Jacobs' name. Darren sat completely still, like if he didn't move, it wouldn't be real. The judge looked straight at him. Mr. Jacobs, is any portion of this debt shared? He swallowed. No, ma'am. Did your wife co-sign or authorize any of these charges? No, he mumbled. The judge leaned back. Then there's no legal basis to transfer liability. Debts in your name remain yours. That's when his face started to crack, the redness creeping up from his collar, the blinking, the shifting in his seat. I gave up my career, he blurted out, voice rising. I supported her. I helped her grow her business. And now I'm supposed to just walk out with nothing? You didn't help me grow anything, I said, calm and clear. The judge slammed her gavel once. Mr. Jacobs, this is not a debate. He stood up suddenly. This is insane. She lied to me. She trapped me in a contract, and now she's pretending I'm some leech. Mr. Jacobs. Her voice was sharp now. He pointed at me. She told me we were a team. She told me none of that stuff mattered. And now she's using it to bury me. This is betrayal. People in the courtroom were staring, frozen. You think I didn't put in effort? He shouted. I believed in her. I gave up jobs. I gave up. The judge's voice cut clean through. Mr. Jacobs, if you do not sit down and control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom. He looked around, eyes darting from the judge to the clerk to the reporters in the back row scribbling notes. His chest heaved, hands curled into fists. He sat, hard, but didn't say another word. The judge took a breath. The prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable. The inheritance remains separate property. All assets in Ms. Jacobs' name remain hers. Mr. Jacobs assumes responsibility for debts in his own name. Bang of the gavel. Ruling is final. Silence. No one moved. Darren stared at the table like he couldn't believe it, like someone had just taken his house, his job, and his last dollar. Which, let's be honest, wasn't far off. I didn't look at him. I just gathered my bag, nodded to Carol, and stood. This man walked into that courtroom thinking he'd take half my life. He walked out owning every cent of his own mess, and nothing else. This man walked into that courtroom thinking he'd take half my life. He walked out owning every cent of his own mess, and nothing else. And within 48 hours, the fallout started. I didn't say a word to anyone. No press, no posts. I didn't need to. Columbus talks, especially when money and ego are involved. And Darren, he gave them a show. By the end of the week, people were calling him the prenup clown. Someone even made a meme of him from the courthouse steps. That stunned face, captioned, "Sign first, read never." I didn't laugh, but I didn't stop it either. A contractor I'd worked with for years pulled me aside at a fundraiser. He told everyone he built your empire, he said. Now nobody wants to be in the same room as him. The Historic Preservation Board, the same group he used to brag about charming, quietly pulled him from their project list. They didn't send an official notice. They just stopped replying to his emails. Word got around that the truck was gone too, repossessed. Not surprising, considering the balance on that loan. Last I heard, he moved in with his sister up in Toledo. One of my vendors saw him working the counter at a strip mall insurance office. Beige walls, fake plants, the works. He used to say he was building generational wealth. Now he was selling car coverage to broke college kids. I didn't celebrate, I just kept working. Funny thing, my business actually grew. Quietly, steadily. I didn't run victory laps, but people respected how I handled it. Clients referred new deals. Investors I hadn't heard from in years started calling again. I didn't have to say anything. The court documents said it all. A few weeks later, I wrote the first check to a new nonprofit I'd been building behind the scenes. It helps women navigate complex financial divorces, real strategy, legal referrals, account separation, the works. Not charity, power. Carol sits on the board. She doesn't say much at meetings, but when she does, everybody listens. I named the fund after my uncle, because if it weren't for him and that prenup he pushed for, I wouldn't have had a damn thing left to fight with. I named the fund after my uncle, because if it weren't for him and that prenup he pushed for, I wouldn't have had a damn thing left to fight with. Last Friday, I drove out to the farmhouse, took the long way down Route 35, windows down, breeze coming in soft through the trees. The place looked exactly how I pictured it all those years ago. White siding, black shutters, wraparound porch, copper gutters glinting in the sun. I stood in the yard for a while, just listening to the wind cut across the grass. It hit me then, how close I came to losing it all. Not just the money, not just the land, the legacy, what my uncle spent his whole life building. What I nearly handed over to a man who treated my work like a temporary bonus prize. Inside, everything smelled like wood polish and lemon oil. Floors shining, furniture restored, antiques placed exactly where they belonged. I'd kept the original beams, even when contractors told me to replace them. I ran my hand along the banister my uncle built when I was 13. He let me help stain it. I messed up one spindle and cried about it for an hour. He laughed and said, "That's how you learn." Well, I'd learned plenty. I haven't heard from Darren in months, not a word. Last update I got was from a mutual friend, said he's still in Toledo, working part-time at a strip mall insurance office, trying to reinvent himself, whatever that means. He thought I was an easy mark, a lonely woman with a checkbook and a bleeding heart. But he underestimated three things: my lawyer, my uncle, and my gut. And now he's the one left empty-handed. Back in the kitchen, I turned off the lights, checked the locks, and pulled the door shut behind me. That solid click felt like punctuation, not just an ending, closure. I took one last look at the place as I walked to my car. That house didn't just survive, I did. And I didn't just keep it, I protected it. As I drove back toward the city, I wasn't thinking about court or paperwork or payback. I was thinking about what it feels like to own something, fully, legally, and without apology. My name on the deed, my hands on the wheel, my life.